Carbohydrates, what are they and should you be afraid of them? That's what we're talking about today. We can get carbohydrates from fruits, vegetables, as well as starches and sugars, all that sort of stuff. Broadly speaking, carbohydrates are made up of saccharides, which are sugar molecules. Our simple carbohydrates are sugars, such as ones found in processed foods like candy, or in gummies, or things like high fructose corn syrup. These are mono and disaccharides. And so a saccharide is the sugar molecule. Monosaccharides and disaccharides are made up of one or two of these sugar molecules, and because they're so simple in their molecular structure, they're very easily absorbed and used by the body for energy. This is why we often feel a pretty fast rush of energy when we eat sugar, and then it also crashes soon after. Our complex carbohydrates are oleo and polysaccharides made up of lots of different molecules all stitched together. This makes them a bit slower to be absorbed and digested by the body, which makes them a bit slower acting. A slower release into the system means more sustained energy over the long term and less crashing. That's why people and my clients who often switch to more complex carbohydrates often find that their energy levels are more stable and higher throughout the day. Now, within carbohydrates, there are a couple of small subsystems. One of them that's really important is fiber, indigestible carbohydrate that comes from fruits, vegetables, and a variety of other sources. Fiber is really important because it helps a lot with gut motility and also can act as a prebiotic for the gut microbiome. This makes it incredibly important for your overall health. There are two types of fiber. There's soluble fiber and there's insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber is often found in things like oats, and that means that it can be absorbed by water. Insoluble fiber is what people generally think of as fiber, something that you would get from vegetables. And this is usually cellulose that comes from the cell walls of vegetables and plants that we can't digest. That helps to stimulate the inside of the intestine to secrete bile, which helps with gut motility. And fiber also feeds the bacteria in the gut, which help with digestion as well as hormone production and a host of other super important bodily processes. Another form of carbohydrate is what's known as a FODMAP. Now, FODMAP is a pretty long acronym that stands for oleo and fermentable oleo. Is that right? Fermentable oleo. Come on. I swear I know it, I just can't say it. Fermentable oleo monosaccharides. Fermentable oleo monosaccharides and polyols. First time. These are easily fermentable carbohydrates that are broken down really quickly by the gut. This can often lead to some discomfort in people who are sensitive. People with IBS or irritable bowel syndrome in particular limit the intake of these carbohydrates because it can cause a fair amount of bloating and discomfort. With that said, if you do not have IBS and don't have any problems with eating these FODMAP foods like garlic, like onions, then there's no reason to eliminate them from your diet. Another small subset of carbohydrate is resistant starch. I won't get too far into this, but take something like a potato, some waxy potatoes when you cook them and then cool them. Their starches actually form a completely different molecular structure, which makes them harder to digest and acting more as a source of fiber. So that's our discussion of carbohydrate structure. Now let's move on to the role of carbohydrates in the body. Carbohydrates, generally in the form of glucose, is the preferred energy source of the body and the brain as well. When you eat carbs, they are digested and absorbed by the body. If you have too much carbohydrate in your body, the excess will be stored as glycogen in the muscles and also in the liver. And when you run out of free glucose in the blood, your body goes into those glycogen stores to break down glycogen to turn it back into glucose to create ATP for energy. I won't get too deep into the discussion of how this works because this is an introductory video, but if you are interested in that, feel free to shoot me a message and we can talk more about all the cool science behind carbohydrates. Quick side note, glycogen and water are stored together, so when somebody goes keto and drops all of their glycogen stores because the body burns it up, they drop a significant amount of water weight, which is why we see such an extreme weight loss when people first start a ketogenic diet protocol. Carbohydrate has some other roles like building of connective tissue, and it's also protein sparing, meaning if you eat carbohydrates, you don't need to eat as much protein. But on to the main question of the video, which is, are carbs bad for me? And the answer is, it depends. Big shock there. Basically every single question in nutrition is answered with it depends. In general, if you're a regular person without any major intolerances or issues, there's no reason to be afraid of carbohydrates. Carbs and sugars are not inherently bad, and they will not inherently cause you to gain weight. And the reason for that is that the reason people gain weight is because they're eating more than they are putting out. The main issue that comes with carbohydrates, in particular simple carbohydrates and processed carbohydrates, is that they're very, 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 very delicious. And so people are primed to overeat them, especially when they're combined with fats. This in turn causes weight gain, of course, because you're eating more than you are putting out, and then people naturally blame the carbohydrate. So in general, carbohydrates are not necessarily bad. There are people who have plenty of intolerances. For some reason, someone might not be able to tolerate rice. It might make them bloated. If you find that you are very sensitive to these things, then there is no reason that you have to include them in your diet. You are welcome to get your energy from whatever macronutrient you prefer, as long as you are getting enough protein to support your bodily function, enough fats to support hormone function, and enough carbs to fuel your body for performance and keep you happy. Obviously, if you have a condition such as diabetes, you need to be a bit more specific about your carbohydrate intake. In that case, always follow the advice of a licensed medical professional. So my recommendations for carbohydrate intake are: 1, try to limit your sugar intake to less than 25% of your total carbohydrate intake for the day. 2, make sure that you are emphasizing the intake of high quality, minimally processed carbohydrates as much as you can. And 3, try to aim for at least 10% of your daily carbohydrate intake coming from dietary fiber. So thanks for watching this brief overview of carbohydrates and their role in your body. If you do have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. If you want to talk a little bit more about carbohydrates or figure out how carbohydrates can work in a plan for you, make sure to follow me on Instagram at g.sweeney, or head over to my website, gsnutritioncoaching.com. You can send me a message there and we'll start to work on a program that will work for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.